Good day, everyone. What I'm about to discuss is the continuation of the pre-colonial period in the Philippines. So last time, Mr. Vasquez discussed the early settlers in the Philippines, which are the Negritos, Indonesians, and Malays. Their diversity and way of living were adopted by us. As we can see, their way of living also includes fishing. And since the only way to migrate from country to country is by using a boat, this is where the government of the pre-colonial Philippines began. Barangay is the earliest form of government in the Philippines. This is the dominant organizational pattern among indigenous communities in the Philippine archipelago. Barangay came from the term balangay, which is a Malay word means sailboat. This is used for trading and cargo around the Philippines, and it is huge that it can cater around 30 to 100 families. This barangay is situated along a riverbank because this is where their source of food and income comes. Each barangay was ruled by a different datu. These barangays are independent from each other. Even though they are independent, they are well organized and much likely function like a city. So wonder why they are not united? This is because many believe that there is no datu that has the power and strength to unite all the barangay. This means that every barangay has a capable datu, thus making all the barangays separate from each other. But when a barangay needs help or in a state of emergency or at war, other barangay would come to its rescue. But for some instances, the datu of different barangays would pick a pangulo or raha among them to make decisions for the multiple barangays when disputes between the members of two or more barangay arises. In addition, when a datu wants to settle a union or fellowship with other datu, the two datu would do the sandugo. This is where both parties would draw blood from their arms and would blend it with wine in a container, and they will both drink it as a sign that they are both kindred spirit, meaning that they have similar interests or attitudes. When the Spaniards colonized us, we had another name for the barangay, which is the barrio. Kaya alam niyo yun, sa mga province, kalimitan tawag sa mga lugar ay baryo. So, barangay, the first wooden boat to sail Southeast Asia, used for cargo and trading. So, ayan, ganyan siya kalaki. Kaya niya talaga makater ang madaming families. Each barangay was headed by a datu. So, sa atin ngayon, tawag natin sa head ng barangay ay chairman. So, the datu acts as the chief executive, legislator, and the judge. He maintains the peace and orderly in the barangay, as well as the well-being of his constituents. But even though it seems that he has all the power, it still has limitations, because they are grounded by traditions, customs, and procedures. Therefore, he is not an absolute ruler. A datu usually gets his position through inheritance, so the chieftain runs in the bloodline. So there are ways to become a datu or aha. When the datu passed away, the first son would succeed him, and when the first son dies, the second son would succeed him. But if the datu failed to have a male heir, the eldest daughter could become the village chief. This just shows that in pre-colonial period, women also get a chance to rule. Since alam naman natin na hanggang ngayon, there is still inequality and discrimination towards women. So last but not the least, you can become the datu if you showcase your prowess, wisdom, and your sincerity to people. Your wealth could also help you become the chief. One of the duties of a datu is the legislator. He gets to create necessary laws with the help of the council, which is composed of elderly people and former datus. The council would then give him advice and guidance. Once these laws were authorized, it will now be announced by the town crier, or the umalahokan. He would travel all throughout the barangay, using a bell to gather the attention of everyone. He would then announce the new law, and once they were disseminated, It is now in effect and those who violates it would have to face penalties. In addition, people also pay buwis in the form of farm products. This is to pay tribute to the Datu for protecting and leading the village. Moreover, most of the law is all about legacy, separate, usury, organization, wrongdoing, and discipline, property rights, family relations, reception, and advances. So, ayan, the council or former datus, which is composed of the elderly people and the former datus. Tapos, sa kabila, sa kanan, yung umalahokan, which is the town crier. Tapos, nakikita niyo yan, yung bell and drums. Ginagamit niya yan para to gather everyone's attention. The pre-colonial culture. Since we have a diverse ethnic groups, we also have varying beliefs. The early Filipinos were composed of different groups that came from different parts of Asia. This gave birth to a community with a system of education and varying religious beliefs. Indigenous spiritual traditions were already practiced by the early Filipinos since. So, indigenous spiritual traditions. Early Filipinos are labeled animistic, which means they believe that everything around us possesses a soul, the objects, phenomena, and the universe itself. Early Filipinos also worship the nature. This is evident until now wherein we believe in spirits and supernatural entities. So these are just some of the gods and goddesses that early Filipinos worshipped. The Anito or Diwata, they consider this as either good or bad, wherein the Diwata is believed to guard forest, and the Anito is believed to be the spirits of our ancestors. The Bathala is the supreme god in Tagalog, and the Lalaon is the god of harvest. Sidapa, the god of death, Barangao, the god of rainbow, and Ijalao, the god of farming. Aside from this, they would worship the moon, stars, caves, mountains, rivers, plants, and trees. They would also worship some creatures like the bird, crow, tortoise, crocodile, and other things they believe has value and connected to their lives. This is also where magic, chants, and prayers are often the key features. Its practitioners were highly respected and some were feared in the community, as they were healers, midwife or hilot, shamans, witches, and warlocks or makukulam, and babaylans. In the Visayas region, there is a belief of witchcraft or kulam and mythical creatures like aswang, nuno sa punso, and other mythical creature. The clothing in the pre-colonial period mainly started with the bahag or G-string, and women wore tube skirts or wraparound skirts. Headdresses, blouses, tunics, scarves, or ankle-length robes were worn on formal occasions, and both men and women wear skirts of various styles. Clothing was made from local and imported materials such as abaca, cotton, and silk. In, in the third picture, we can see the Barong Tagalog just before we were colonized by Spaniards. The men wore a sleeve doublet made of kanga or rough cotton that reached slightly below the waist. It is collarless with a front opening. Their loins were covered with a pain that hung between the legs and mid-thigh. The women also wore sleeve dress, but shorter than the men. They also wear a pain attached to the waist and reaching to the feet accented by a colorful belt. The materials used for their dress is of fine line or Indian muslin. The writing system in the pre-colonial period in the Philippines was in the form of baybayin. Baybay literally means to spell, wherein it is developed from Kawi script of Java, Bali, and Sumatra. In addition, Malay language has a huge contribution to our culture. Early Filipinos used Sharp pointed tools as a pen, leaves, bamboo, and trunk skins as the paper. So abugida is the pre-colonial method of handwriting. So in this, baybayin is in the form of consonant-vowel combinations wherein every consonant ends with the vowel A. To produce other vowels like E, I, O, and U, we use a mark called kudlit. To produce the sound E or E, the kudlit would be placed above the consonant. And to produce the sound O and U, the kudlit is placed below the consonant. So notice that in this picture that the other vowels would only be produced with the correct placement of kudlit. In addition, the first Visayan, Tagalog, Ilocano, and some ethnic groups have their own dialect and form of writing too. They have an alphabet composed of 17 letters, 3 of which are vowels and 14 are consonants. The Muslims also has their own system basing on their dialect. This is called Kirim of Maranao and Jiwi of the Tausug, which they are still using until this day. The literature in the pre-colonial period is a collection of ideas among various ethnic groups that inhabited the Philippine archipelago. This is composed of varying human interests, wherein folk speeches, folk songs, folk narratives, indigenous rituals, and mimetic dances are present. It also involves politics and religion. Remember that this literature was passed down from generation to generation orally. Means early Filipinos still find writing difficult. Thus, they began to tell stories around. Bugtong are riddles that is either a statement or question with a reference to the characteristic of an unknown object that is needed to be guessed. A collection of Filipino wit, literary talent, and keen observation of the surroundings. For example, number 1, dalawang batong itim malayo ang nararating. This means the eyes. Number 2, dumaan ang hari, nagkagatan ang mga pari. This pertains to the zipper. So next, talinghaga. This is what our parents sometimes use to us. It is not represented by the literal meaning, but more on the imaginative meaning. These are figurative words that contains deep meaning. For example, number 1, balat sibuyas means sensitive, may bulsa sa balat means kuripot, luha ng buwaya means hindi totoo ang pag-iyak. At last, balat kalabaw. This means walang hiya. Folk songs are songs that depict the lives and experiences of the people. It is repetitive, sonorous, didactic, means in a slow pace or made to be easily understood, and naive. Traditional songs have a strong connection to nature. These songs are used in various situations. For example, Uyai is a lullaby, Kamintang is a war song, Kundiman is a melancholic love, Harana means serenade, Tagay is a drinking song, Mambayo Kalingarais is a pounding song, Subli is a dance ritual song of courtship or marriage, and Tagulaylay is the song of the dead. Folk narratives, on the other hand, are epics, which is magical, since it contains exotic stories and folk tales derived from traditions and adventures of a heroic figure in the history of a nation. They were created to explain the phenomena of the world long before science came to be known. For example, biag nilamang, daagyu or olahing, sandayo, aligoyon or dahudhod, at labaw donggon. Salawikain is simply a statement that expresses the truth. This is the norms or codes of behavior, community beliefs, and wisdom through a rhyming verse. It served as laws or rules on good behavior by our ancestors. It describes the basic rule of conduct, the maxim, which means the general truth. For example, number 1, Hangga't makitid ang kumot, matutong mamaluktot. This means that nararapat lang na matuto tayo magtipid pag tayo'y nagigipit. Number two, mahirap gisingin ang nagtutulog-tulugan. This means na hindi talaga natin magigising sa katotohanan ang mga taong sa umpisa pa lang ay bulag na sa realidad. Tanaga, on the other hand, is a monorhyming heptasyllabic quatrain with the same rhyme at the end of each line. This expresses life lessons and insights. For example, alipatong lumapag, sa lupa nagkabitak, sa kahoy nalugayak, sa puso naglagablab. Notice that they have 7 syllables in each line. Long. When we first hear bolong, witchcrafts and enchantments would be the first word that would come to us. This is created to give respect, ask for permission, excuse or apology for the unseen spirits or elemental spirits in order to deliver us from trouble or danger. For example, tabi-tabi po ingkong makikiraan po lamang, bari-bari apo, umisbo lang titao. This is an Ilocano word. 'Di ba ginagamit natin 'to 'pag nakakita tayo ng nuno sa punso, sa mga gubat, or sa tingin natin ay yung mga nadidilim na lugar. On the other hand, mythology involves elements with superpower and inhumane abilities. This is where God and goddesses are involved. This is a narrative of how things began, how the world began, and how humans and animals were created, and even the universe. For example, how the moon and the stars came to be, from Bukidnon to Mindanao. 2. The gods and goddesses of Ilocos. Number 3. Mag-asawang tubig of Tagalog. So last but not the least, legends are stories about a human figure with an extraordinary ability. The difference between legend and myths is that legend portrays a human hero, while the myth portrays a supernatural being in the form of spirits. For example, Bernardo Caprio, The Legend of Sleeping Beauty, The Legend of the Dama de Noche, The Legend of the Banana Plant, and The Legend of the Firefly. So that is all. I hope that you learned something from us. Thank you for listening.